Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. HeirofCarthage here, and yes, we're going to get some more Etruscan action. They are the new faction in the Unconquered Sun mod that bring an interesting variety into these sub-commander battles, and hopefully you all are enjoying them. I have been absent for a couple of days. I was just spending some extra time with the family, so apologize for the lack of videos there, but it was for a good cause. And definitely something that I have to take time to do every now and then. Now, I did put a vote up on the channel of what you all wanted to see, and some of you might be saying, well, the Rome 2 battles didn't win that vote. That's correct, they did not, but I was behind on these, and I wanted to get one out there for the folks who love this. And I am looking at the votes and trying to piece together a plan for like the next couple of months on what kind of content you all want to see based on that. Obviously, I'm going to do a little bit more covering of Pharaoh because it's a new game. And it's almost a new game, but anyway, we'll get to that. Let's cover this battle. We've got Etruscan horse skirmishers out here. Let's take a look at these. I haven't gotten a great look at these so far, just kind of familiarize ourselves with this unit. It's qualified as very light missile cavalry. It looks like they have standard ammunition, standard damage, and really nothing too outlandish here. There's 45 armor, which I'm guessing a chunk of that probably comes from the shield. So a pretty light horse skirmisher unit, but at least keeps that flexibility there for the Etruscans. They're going to be facing off against some auxiliary Numidian cav that's pretty heavily outnumbered. The Romans have some equites and some Saki Hastati out here as well. And let's take a look at the rest of this Roman army. Now, this should be a cool matchup, honestly. There's some interesting units on the Etruscan side. The Romans definitely has some fearsome infantry, and we can see some of that here already. A couple of Evocati cohort mixed in with those Saki Hastati. The Saki Hastati are an interesting unit. Let me see if I can get one held down here. It was their armor there at 60, which is pretty darn good for an otherwise light unit. Or I'm thinking of Saki Extraordinary too, which of course different units here. But let's take a look at the missiles. There's some auxiliary Balearic slingers making their way forward. 2 Numidian cavalry out here right now. Ooh, they're being chased by the Italian noble cavalry. It doesn't quite catch them, but gets real darn close. And then this equite over here gets baited in and absolutely destroyed by the horse skirmishers. So some nice horseplay so far over here by the horseplay. Makes it sound like a middle school, playground or something, but I think you all get where I'm going. Cavalry play is what we'll call it. The rest of the Roman cavalry, we have, it looks like 3 auxiliaries, a couple of legatus units, and a general and bodyguard there. We can see some gladiatresses, Evocati, Saki Hastati, another Evocati, Hastati spread thin, which this is something Hastati can do, so there's 3 of them up front. Spread thin, we've got some Vigiles, and then there's auxiliary Syrian archers behind those slingers, so a significant skirmish force here for Rome, and likely something that the Etruscans won't be able to match. But let's take a look at the rest of the Etruscans. I've already seen 2 of these Italian noble cavalry. Those are very dangerous, something akin to like a Campanian cavalry or an Aspis companion cavalry, a very heavy sword cav. Let's take a look at the infantry, Italian swordsmen, and mercenary Ligurian swordsmen. Now, the Ligurian swordsmen have very high attack, so they're a unit you really want to watch out for. But even the Italian swordsmen, similar to a Hastati in many respects, there is some Volsci warriors here, and we've got them, they look kind of like an Iberian unit of sorts in terms of stats. Decent charge bonus, pretty solid attack. Let's take a look and see what we got here. Some Bruttii slingers. These are kind of like Britain slingers or Eastern slingers in terms of stats. And there are Levy slingers. So the Etruscans definitely outmatched in the skirmish department just in terms of raw firepower, but we'll see how the exchange goes. We've got an Etruscan Guard general. 2 of those. Those are going to be a heavy spear unit. Should be interesting. Oh, I said that. They're an axe unit. Sorry, I get that wrong. They're an axe unit, so they have heavy AP damage. And then behind them are some Etruscan spears, more Volsci warriors. So, going to be interesting. Those 2 Italian cavalry, of course, are very dangerous to this Roman sword infantry. Rome does have the capability to defend against them with multiple auxiliary cavalry. Those auxiliary cavalry need to be serious about facing that Italian noble cavalry, because 1 or 2 good charges from those guys and a couple of these cohorts or Hastati will be out for the count, and that could give an advantage to the Etruscan League. We will see how that goes. Rome is definitely going to need to maximize its skirmisher potential here. because they hold an advantage there, whereas I think their infantry numbers are relatively low because of the inclusion of the Evocati, and they'll need to make sure that those units count. They're not going to want them to get slammed into by a super heavy sword cavalry. So like out here, for instance, these Italian cavalry could wreak havoc at just about any moment. Here comes that mercenary Italian horseman. We're going to see a square formed here by the Vigiles. Nice job to slow down that cavalry charge and brace better. It's still going to be painful because it's just a Vigile unit in the end. And then Rome is already suffering out here. The Sacchi Hastati not doing well here against the Italian spears. It was probably softened up by skirmishers and cavalry. So the Romans kind of losing some units piecemeal out here on their left flank. Meanwhile, the Etruscans have set up a large crescent formation where they're kind of in a standoff, not engaging over here, but they are engaging on the flank where they feel like they have this cavalry advantage. And at the moment they do. The Romans have yet to commit more of their cavalry in that direction. They may be concerned there is more hidden Etruscan cavalry, and there might be. We can't see all of it. This Equite still doggedly pursuing out here. This is a different Equite unit. And this is just not going to... This isn't going to work. These horsemen are going to be too fast. You've got the Italian cavalry. Now, this is a good call right here. Look at what those auxiliary Numidians just did to that Italian noble. That was some valuable damage done by Rome. And it looks like that a melee engagement beginning, and it's going to be interesting to see how Rome handles this. The numbers heavily in favor of the Etruscans here, and then with the Sacchi Hastati falling out here, that situation's about to get worse for Rome. So, I'm going to be curious to see how their units do. Now, head-to-head, something like this Evocati cohort, again, assuming it doesn't get mashed up by slingers or cavalry, those Evocati cohort are going to chop down Etruscans for days. So, they should do quite well. Going to be a little bit of damage done here. Umbrian Hillmen bringing in that cheap AP damage, though. That's... I think the Hillmen are cheap AP damage. I'm pretty sure they're an axe unit. Oh, no, they're not. Never mind. So this Evocati cohort, I mean, they should be slicing and dicing here, but they are outnumbered. And then there's an Umbrian spearman making its way through. This is what I mentioned, those numbers things here that kind of worried me. There's a second Evocati cohort coming up, but that leaves no heavy infantry on this other flank. And so if the attack is pushed by the Etruscans, I think they're going to be in good shape. We'll see whether Rome's quality of infantry can pull them out of this. It's going to have to if they want to find success. Now, that was a nice move there, just dumping Pila into that open flank and crushing that spearman. It's 30-something kills there. So, not a great attack so far right here for the Etruscans. However, their levy slingers are getting some work done here against that exposed Sacchi Hastati. And the Romans have such a skirmish advantage. I guess there's a little bit of fear of keeping those skirmishers too close to the front. Look at this cavalry back here. Full-on attack. The Romans are bringing in some auxiliary cav. The auxiliary cav is going to be tough in a melee, but there's not a bunch of them. And then that leaves this free. Oh, this is big trouble for the Romans. This is huge trouble. I was kind of thinking this cavalry might swing back over here, but it is not. Let's see where it goes. But an Italian cavalry just running free in the Roman backlines at the moment. Not good. Yeah, these Legatus units need to get away, fix it with the auxiliaries, and then deal with it with the skirmishers. Yep, there comes the archers. That auxiliary cavalry, or sorry, the Italian noble cavalry may have overextended itself. An Intimidate dropped on the Romans, so that's going to impede their ability use. So good job by the Romans over here. They cleaned up a lot of that infantry fight. They can now shift resources to the other flank where they are being absolutely swarmed right now by the Etruscan League, storming down the hill. Can these Roman skirmishers stay safe? Can the Romans deal with that Italian noble cavalry? Right now, the answer looks like yes, they are doing so. That could be a big play. There are still a number of Etruscan horsemen out here, like this Ligurian horseman, again, running free. But the Romans have a little bit in reserve back here as well, so I think a good play so far by both sides. We're just going to have to see where this one ends up. Those Volsci warriors, Umbrian Hillmen going to be smashed into by the Roman cavalry there, including the Legatus. Keeping these skirmishers safe is going to be absolutely critical. Ooh, look at this. This Italian noble cavalry might get free over here. Still got 18 units left. More than enough to wreck a skirmish line if it gets an opportunity. But here comes that bow fire, trying to put an end to that, and that is an appropriate target if ever there has been one. Bow fire is typically effective against cavalry. Look at this over here. Those Hastati holding up, as well as the Vigiles and the Evocati cohort already with 112 kills ready to come in and fix more of these Etruscans. up on that hill, there is a Volsky warrior looking for a rear charge here against the gladiatresses, and they will be able to come over here and crush that gladiatress unit with just sheer numbers. Gladiatresses getting a lot of kills, but completely overwhelmed at the moment. So the Romans definitely facing a ferocious horde of Etruscans here in terms of numbers. The cavalry desperately cycle charging these units. The Avocati cohort up here trying to hold the front, but now you've got these slingers working their way in here, and this is about to get real dangerous for Rome. They have got to answer these slingers, and they've got to answer them quickly. Those slingers could come in here and destroy what little infantry Rome has. Look at this Avocati cohort already wavering. That is not good. I think that's a scare effect on the Volsky warriors. It is, and that makes sense why that Avocati is now wavering. So the Volsky warriors have that scare effect, and it works. Wow, what a loss for the Romans. 40-something Avocati running from the battlefield. Now that sets up more rear charges from the Volsky warriors, which means that this Avocati cohort is in big trouble. It might want to turn around. It doesn't have any good options, to be honest. And then the Roman commander here thinking to get after those slingers, but instead just takes a face full of rocks and gets rocked. So the Roman skirmishers still alive, though. This could prove a challenge for the Etruscans in a late game brawl. It kind of just depends. Like, if the Romans can deal with these charging units. The problem is there are so many Etruscan infantry units left and so very little Roman infantry. And look at this, that Volsky warrior again, that scare effect. This Avocati cohort, they can't take everything that gets thrown at them. They did quite well. I worry very much about the Romans at this point just due to numbers, but if these skirmishers can get backed up and they can start pouring in some fire, they could start turning a tide very quickly in terms of how much damage they can do. What worries me, though, is what do you do when all of this stuff comes running at you? There's no one left to block for you. And so I think the Romans are kind of ending up in this position of nothing left to play the blocker here. Now, that Avocati cohort managed to not rout, and it's still fighting. Oh, there it goes, though, and it's going to get shattered probably on the way out of there. It's attempting to kind of flee through this little gap, but it's going to take egregious losses as it's pursued by those Volsky warriors. Nice use of the Volsky warriors, getting those flank charges. I don't know how the Romans peel themselves back from this one. You still have Levy slingers, and you still have some Brutii slingers. The Romans definitely have a huge, dangerous contingent of skirmishers back here, but they have nothing with which to protect them. And I'm just not confident in the way that Rome can pull this one off. We'll see. We'll see. And it also kind of depends on what the Etruscans do here. If I'm the Etruscans, I just go full forward and just go flying at these guys. You do have to respect that little bit of cavalry left, but you've got enough units to protect your skirmishers. I'm just going full-on charge, maybe rest for a second. But I think you can take out these Roman skirmishers with just a full assault here because they won't be able to stop and fire. Now, what they may choose to do is use their own skirmishers to whittle it down and just make it easier. And that would also be a viable option here, is to just bring your slingers up, exchange fire. Even if you lose, it doesn't matter. You will have reduced the Roman capability significantly. Now, again, I guess that kind of depends on how well these units skirmish. We shall see here in a moment. But yeah, that initially in this battle, that lack of numbers on the side of Rome had me concerned. And that definitely became a factor later in that game. And the Roman numbers were a bit lacking, partially because you have so many expensive skirmishers here. That takes a toll on what it is that you're able to field from an infantry standpoint. And I think that we had not just more infantry from the Etruscans, but a nice diversity of infantry. We had the scare units with the Volsky warriors, we had the cheap units with the Umbrian hillmen, and then we had the Etruscan guards to back them all up, and the Italian swordsmen to kind of lead the way with a few spear units here and there. So again, I think that a very nice difference, what do you call it, a very nice diversity of units there that gives the Etruscans a lot of variety, but also the ability to exploit gaps in the Roman line that were created by that lack of numbers. And I say that lack of numbers, there may have been a decent matchup in terms of numbers, but remember that some of those Hastati went down early to skirmish fire and the cavalry charges, and think about how useful those units would have been later in that battle. So the Romans had a few units get picked off piecemeal early, and it definitely ended up making life very difficult for them late. So the Etruscans have decided to do option 2 here, which was stand off and just start firing. And the Romans are looking for any advantage they can find, and honestly, there's really nothing they can do at this point. So let's say that they defeated the slingers from the opposite side. They wouldn't have enough ammo left to kill the infantry. And so at this point, I mean, it's a foregone conclusion that the Romans are dying. The question is how they're dying, or when they're dying, not so much if they're dying. Yeah, these slingers, out of ammunition, they're going to just charge forward. So again, the Romans have no answer to this. They can charge their cavalry in. It doesn't matter, so these slingers still have some ammo, so they're going to wheel up and try and get into tighter range. So it was a good job by Rome keeping these skirmishers alive. However, when skirmishers get left with nothing to protect them, they end up in this situation where, despite potentially still being dangerous, that's only if, in this case, the Etruscans decided to just wheel up and halt, right, and let the Romans shoot them in the back or something, right? That's about the only way that the Etruscans lose this. So the numbers game here, in my opinion, was what sealed the deal. Now that's not always the case. Sometimes you can get some numbers and it still won't do it. It kind of depends on a number of factors, but in this case the numbers were used effectively to, number one, gain some small advantages early in those cavalry engagements. Now ultimately Rome won that cavalry engagement, which was impressive. So it was a good job by the Roman players. However, it cost them too much in the process. They lost those light infantry units early on there, and those light infantry units were desperately needed to make this infantry fight last longer. So imagine if those Volsci warriors, for instance, were not able to roam free through those gaps. If there was light infantry to get in their way and slow them down, this could have ended differently, because then those Roman skirmishers might have been able to start pouring fire into the infantry fights against the Etruscan guards, or other things, but they weren't able to. That threat of the big cavalry engagement in the back kept those Roman skirmishers moving, and then the intrusion of the Volsci warriors and the spearmen also kept them moving, where they had to run away. So that was really well done by Massamax, Char, and Nummer, and then Sol and Alexander in war. A good job here, I think, trying to pull that one out. Again, a key play here is you had to keep these skirmishers safe, and they did that. Unfortunately, though, the infantry just wasn't able to keep up with what, in my opinion, was a large number of enemy infantry. So if you look at it, the Romans outnumbered this infantry by 1. Now, granted, a lot of this is light infantry, but then you come over here, and oof, the numbers game gets rough here. See that? So yeah, well, there's 4 here. So let's get the total numbers, and that way, so we'll have 9 and 4, so 13 Roman infantry units in total, and then it looks like we had 10 there for the Etruscans, and another 8 here, and 9. So, yeah. So the Etruscans definitely had a big numerical advantage there, and they were able to push it. But hey, good job to all the players. I love this one. Hopefully we'll get to see some more of these battles. If you all want to play some of these battles, make sure you go over and look at the Gathering Stone Discord. I have it linked in the description. That's where they organize and play these games. It's a ton of fun. I've done it with them before and would highly recommend it. HeirofCarthage signing out for now. I'll see you soon.